Hello everybody and welcome back to another Future of the Fortress. This is a monthly Q&A that is hosted on the Bay12 forums, talking about everything related to Dwarf Fortress. Once a month, Tarn Adams, aka Toady1, co-founder of Dwarf Fortress and Bay12 Games, answers some questions from the community that have been submitted over the last month. If you would like to take part in these questions and answers, you can do so by joining the Bay12 forums. I will link the thread in question in the description of this video. But do keep in mind that this is a question and answers thread, and not a suggestions thread. Sometimes people very carefully word their questions so that they are suggestions, and often these get skipped, or politely told by other members of the thread to simply redirect their ideas into the suggestions thread. Alongside of the Future of the Fortress, there is the Bay12 Games report, where Tarn gives an update on the status of Bay12 as a game developer. We'll be starting there before diving into the questions and answers. So, Bay12 Games report for February 7th, 2026, Toady writes, "Sorry for the delay. I've been sick through the beginning of the month, and conjunctivitis is one of the illnesses that makes it harder to type or do any work at all. I should be able to start cooking up the next regular update now, and then turn back to the foundations of magic that we're doing for the next feature-oriented release. January went well on the strength of the Tale of the Winter Sale, with another 10,000 copies sold for the month. Thank you very much, Tarn." Moving on to the Future of the Fortress Q&A proper, the first question comes in from Inarius, and they write, "About the future magic professions, do you plan to have something like a researcher, who would also be the caster, a single profession of a wizard, or would casting and researching be two different professions? Or do you envision several professions in the wizarding world, such as health, as in bone doctors, stitches, etc.? And Tarn's response is, "There are certainly going to be some peripheral professions, to be occupied by any assistance you offer up in whatever the particular magic type uses for the research and lab analogs. I think sometimes, as with the current necromancers, understanding can be the same as being able to cast. And in other cases, knowledge and the ability will be separate, which would allow people to specialize somewhat. Practically, for the first time round, there might not be as much differentiation, because we'll be happy to see new stuff working at all. There's also the case where the Fortress Wizard and assistants are making things to be used, in which case the casting is done by object holders, who might not be magically skilled or knowledgeable at all." The next question comes in from High-Speed Flying Gladius, who writes, "Plump Helmet Men and Gorlax occasionally join Dwarven sites during World Gen, becoming fully fledged members of their civilization. I find the idea of these fledgling, non-civilized species joining the per-established civilizations fascinating from a historical perspective. Will the role of these friendly underground sapients in World Gen or Fort gameplay ever be expanded past the occasional visitor and animal? I think there is much to explore in the ideas of multi-species civilizations and forts, recruitable manpower from the vast caverns, unique biologies, and the possible interactions via collaboration or conflict." And Tarn's response is, "Regarding underground civilizations and intelligent critters, when we do get to the underground map rewrite, this will almost certainly be explored further." And a second question from High-Speed Flying Gladius, and they write, "Currently, the hunter job will exclusively use weapons that utilize the crossbow skill, ignoring bows and arrows altogether. This has complicated my modding experience somewhat. Is it possible to modify the job to be able to use both skills and weapons, or perhaps even melee weapons? On the topic of hunters, currently hunters will almost always sleep on the floor, ignoring both dormitories and bedrooms. Is this intended? Could it be changed?" And Tarn's response is, "The hunters sleeping how they do is intended and ancient. More to do with them not walking back to the fort while they were on task when the hunting took place on the left side, and the bedrooms might be too far to the right side, and allowing other sorts of hunters would be reasonable." A question comes in from Lovecraft89, and they ask, "I had a question related to modding. With the current state of the code, would it be possible to allow modders to overwrite the graphic tiles used for flooring and walls and ramps for a specific materials? Examples, make a specific stone type or wood use a more rustic graphic. or allow modders to specify a custom tile graphic and make a non-standard materials usable for building, such as hay or barn flooring from some plants, or rug and carpet floors and tents and tapestries for walls from cloth, etc. Or is there major obstacles that make it unpractical to implement, kinda like the fluids and waters and lava situation? And if it is, do you think that's something you might explore later down the road? Obviously, I doubt this is anywhere near a priority. Sure, cottagecore fortress sounds nice, but I'm definitely more hyped for magic. But if it's technically already possible, a throne room with a dragon bone walls and a giant silk spider flooring, or with a bit of DF hack, all of the fun possibilities of meat floors and walls and haunted biome combos might be worth digging a bit too deeply and greedily with IDA Pro. And Tarn's response is, I think it's currently supported. I'm all for having cooler rugs and floors. For floors, the edging hierarchy is the tricky part, since we only have a limited number of bits to work with there, which we haven't nearly exhausted, but it can be exhausted. I don't think it would be super difficult in the case of ramps, assuming we don't want new edging. Adding new tile edges is something that has to be done with more care. For a lot of ramps, it just uses the generic ramp overlay on a base tile, and there's no reason that couldn't be piped in a different direction if graphics are available. Walls are also pretty straightforward, and none of it is as tricky as adding more fluids of the water and magma variety. And a question that harkens back to a question from last month. This comes in from Urist McTinkerer, and they say, I saw a recent question about Wayland's support on Linux here, and I believe that Valve just released, as of last November, a new version of the Steam Linux runtime that makes use of SDL2 compatibility to provide SDL2 support via SDL3. That alone should be enough to provide Wayland support to Dwarf Fortress, and I was actually able to confirm that when running the non-Steam version of Dwarf Fortress directly in my system using SDL2 compatibility from my distro. Do you think it would be possible to evaluate using the new version 4 of the Steam Linux runtime for an upcoming Steam release? And Tarn's response is, cool, I'll check it out. And a chunky one from iTheon, and they say, have you thought about implementing portals to new demonic and angelic dimensions that would encourage the pursuit of new powers that would come to the world? We do have the underworld in the current worlds, but it serves as nothing more than a skill check for adventurers, as it's completely empty and doesn't encourage exploration. I imagine that with the world gen rewrite, we might see some actual meaning in conquering the demons, and if so, what interesting things would you put there that would push the players in both Fortress and Adventure mode towards that goal? It would be interesting to tell the tale of a brave hero that's making a name through fighting dangerous animals, killing bandits, and protecting the world from evil hordes of goblins and driving away evil mages, that would seek the ancient knowledge and powerful artifacts to finally become a demigod and be able to challenge actual evil deities. Or, on the other hand, a tale of a villain that's slaughtering the innocent and conquering the world for his evil overlords, seeking power that allow him to destroy the hope for salvation by vanquishing merciful gods. Both of these tales bear two questions. Are we going to be able to meet deities in person one day? And are we going to see the separation of deity alignment on a good and evil scale? And Tarn's response is, we've thought about various dimensions and portals, and we're still working towards it, as well as various god concepts. It's just going to trickle in piece by piece now. And iTheon tags a second question onto their big paragraph, and they write, have you thought about making legendary warriors actually enjoy fending off invaders instead of slowly spiraling down towards madness with each enemy they fell? These warriors should probably feel immense pride in defending their fellow innocent citizens, knowing that they are the vanguard of the civilization. The feeling of triumph after defeating enemy sieges does not seem to offset the amount of stress that they go through because of trauma, meaning that sooner or later they need to be given a warrior's death, be exiled, turned into intelligent undead, or separated from the rest of society for several years so they can come to terms with their stress without beating other dwarves to death with their fists in a wild tantrum. If me, blind here, would interject, I would say that's a skill issue. You need to make sure that those dwarves are brave and like training, but I digress. And Tarn's response is, warriors could certainly afford to have some additional thoughts and understanding of their situation. Unending violence without downtime will almost always end in tragedy, though, no matter what other changes are made. The next question comes in from Afghani84, and they say, is there going to be a long wait this time around with the Myth and Magic update? I assume that more frequent updates are beneficial for player satisfaction and sales with the Steam version active, so it might be counterproductive from a business standpoint with that in mind. So just wondering whether you plan to have a longer time period without regular updates, as before with big updates. I'm asking since I'm kind of waiting for that phase to start, another big playthrough again. And Tarn quotes both Volleylol and DPH Kraken, so we will read their responses first, starting with Volleylol. And they say, long waits are not being done anymore. This is partially because of the economic models that forces more regular releases, so big arcs have to be split up into sections that are months long, and not years long. And it is partially because, thanks to more people working on the game, and source control and minor releases can be done in between these month-long periods needed for major features. Version 53.09 is like that and released just the other day. And DPH Kraken's response is, quoting Tarn from memory, we're killing the big weight dead. That's been the party line now, and in more interviews that I cannot count. Tarn's been putting in honest work with a newly continuous update schedule. The big weight was supposed to be overhauling all of the map stuff to make way for Magic. And all of the public communication has said that we're getting Magic, maps, and modding as the features are ready instead of hibernating until spring comes. Thank you, DPH Kraken. And Tarn's response is, we're going to be continuing with regular updates, and when sufficient Magic stuff is ready, as outlined in the announcement, we'll release that too, without having everything we had originally planned to do over years prior to the Steam version. The next question is a three-parter, and it's coming in from Rudyard Clipping. And they ask, are there plans to implement some kind of prehistory? As of now, Year Zero feels like a big bang, with nothing before, and everything after. Every civ, every beast, comes to birth at Year Zero. Yet some dwarves are stated to be 80 years old already in Year Zero. It would be awesome to see a prehistory, where all of the things that builds the Year Zero base would appear more organically. Sometimes the elves first, then dwarves, sometimes humans first, and then goblins, with different myths of origin. Different reasons and eras for each civ being born. Maybe ages, Stone Age, Bronze Age, maybe cataclysms, maybe archaeology, maybe even evolution, but I reckon that would be a wild dream. And I will jump directly to their second question as Tarn responds to them in one bundle. Following the previous question, are there plans to allow civilizations to be born after Year Zero? As of now, they can thrive or disappear, but no one can rise later in history. It could come from schisms, mergings, pioneering in uninhabited places, both passively in the world map just by advancing history, and sometimes through active decisions taken directly in fort mode. And Tarn's response is, yeah, the myth generator we've been talking about for a decade was meant to address this, and we've now arrived at some portion of it for the next update. So I'd expect to see different world generation processes that covers a non-numeric pre-time period as well as a longer span of years. In the prototype, civilizations arose at different times. I think certain entity restructuring, more associated with embark scenarios, will be required to get schisms and merges, etc., working on a civilization level. So I wouldn't expect that just yet. And the final question from Rudyard Clipping is, are there plans to allow fine-tuning of precise crafts? Embellishment of items is pretty random as of now. It would be great to be able to specify quality filters, value filters, or straight-up specific items, gems, and materials. I'd like to add a moody artifacts to that question. Artifacts should keep a strong feeling of randomness, but I feel they are mostly unremarkable or utter crap to the point I don't really care when a dwarf gets moody. Memorable, unique, interesting ones are very rare. Both are currently micromanageable, but it's really tedious and painful. And Tarn's response is, it would be in line with the rest of the specification you can do for material and artwork on objects already. The strange mood mechanic is ancient and definitely needs more work. And a quick two-parter from Lingaik. Lingaik? I'm not sure how to say that one. And they say, does metal plate change the physical attributes of equipment, or is it merely decorative? And Tarn's response is, crafty improvements like menacing spikes are only decorative. The second part of Lingwic's question is, in the classic adventure mode, when hearing other characters' dialogues, the speaker's numeric behavior is displayed too far from the dialogue box. Is this a problem that can be quickly fixed, similar to the correct display that appears when you start a conversation with someone? And Tarn's response is, that should be straightforward. A question comes in from Stained Class. This is a 4-parter. I will be reading them in 4 parts. Starting with, I, as many, appreciate the decision to remake portraits despite some overcorrection. How was the decision to remake portraits made? Was the decision mostly taken because of the negative reactions, or did you and Zach have a desire to make some changes to begin with? Were we too harsh with the artist? I'm going to interject here as blind. Yes. Yes, you were. Even in terms of a well-formed criticisms, I hope people saying they look a bit too realistic now doesn't demoralize you or Neo Rice is good too much. Did you expect some drama like this to happen as the fandom grows? I mostly saw the complaints on the DF subreddit, but I heard you never go to Reddit yourself. Where do you see most of the feedbacks? And Tarn's response is, I don't have more to say about the remake process than I've said already. The drama doesn't feel new. Things like this have been happening since the game came out. The numbers are higher on average now, and enough to make press when past kerfuffles did not. We have a chat where we coordinate, so it's possible I saw things there first. I don't recall. The second question from Stained Class is as follows. Last month you said how history works as the first myths drop. Will change in the next updates. Could you tell us more? And Tarn's response is, not yet until it's actually working. MythGen smears out the creation of civilizations, and it just feels wrong if the years are too close together. So we're experimenting with a broader timeline during the first part of World Generation. The third part of Stained Class's questions is something like this. With procedural dragons and others coming, will being intelligent or not be part of the procedural generation? What megabeasts, other than dragons, may have procedural generation in the future? And Tarn's response is, it seems like a core dragon variant property, so I'd want to do it, but we don't really have anything for intelligent megabeasts currently, although we've talked about it before as I recall. The only other megabeasts are the Hydra and the Rock and the Bronze Colossus. Certainly any of those could come up for generation if dragons are. And the fourth and final part of the multi-parter from Stained Class is here. Speaking about intelligence, may intelligent megabeasts and semi-megabeasts, including existing ones, which are all intelligent for semi-megabeasts, become able to interact in other ways than rampaging monsters who are not different from unintelligent ones, like slowly befriending a civ, or taking over it as a tyrant, or living as a recluse hermit, quest giver for adventurers. I mostly imagine for these intelligent dragons. But I guess Cyclopses or Ettins could do this too. May other intelligent beings have more interactions too, notably fairies or pixies being more than praise for cats, or perhaps dwarf-sized creatures like merpeople. And Tarn's response is, yeah, we have various notes on this along these lines. I'm not sure when we'll be able to focus on it. A question comes in from Orpheus, and they say, on the topic of magic in Dwarf Fortress, will different civs have access to different types of magic when you start a new world based on generation? We know the goblins are going to have demon-trained sorcerers, and the dwarves will be getting explosions of some form. But will elves and humans be getting their own unique types of magic that other civs won't have immediate access to until they interact with those factions to try to get a wizard from another civilization to join their fortress, or otherwise acquire items that teach magical abilities from another civ? And Tarn's response is, yeah, and it'll be different in every world as well. A question comes in from Beeg, and they say, adventurer farmers have been mentioned in previous posts. Will adventurers be able to farm in friendly sites, or will they only be able to farm on their own site? And Tarn's response is, we have the farms sitting there in adventure mode, but they don't do anything. They're used plot by plot in world generation, so hopefully at some point they'll be usable afterwards. And the second part of Beeg's questions is, will adventurers as site rulers receive any mechanical updates when site building is re-added? Currently they can just recruit guards. And Tarn's response is, I'm not sure when new factional abilities will come online. I can't tie anything to site building as a guarantee yet. And the third and final parter of Beeg's multi-parter, and they ask, when adventurer site building is added, will adventurers be able to build temples to their deities in their sites? And if they do, will they receive any divine benefits? And Tarn's final response to these three parts. is right now the only benefit from a temple is an easy source of curses. Once the fort magic stuff becomes established with the next major release, we should have a better idea of what an adventurer temple could mean. And a question comes in from Jason Mell. It's worded a little bit weird, so I'll just state that I think they're talking about playing as elves as another faction. Let's see if I can translate this. Will Elf Retreat be a separate executable or an add-on? And what is the release date? But seriously, has anything like this crossed your mind? Or, if not this, then something else that lies beyond 1.0, or version 100, I guess? And Tartan quotes Volleylol, so I will read their response first, and they say, "Version 1.0 is far, far away. I don't think there are any plans for after 1.0, though certainly better support for non-dwarf settlements is planned before that. Toady has talked quite a bit about it. It's related to Embark Scenarios arc, and it got some coverage in one of the more recent Dwarf Fortress talks." And Tarn's response is, "Yeah, we've thought about it, of course. The Embark map shapes, tall and rectangular solids, and emphasized mechanics lend themselves to digging creatures rather than builders or tree dwellers, but elements of the map rewrite were meant to address part of this. It would be nice to get a 17 by 17 Embark size for the existing human villages working, but there are various obstacles with new construction and placement stuff. It's almost okay in terms of making buildings though, that also still needs some work to feel good. Then, we just need some different farming notations, and it would be pretty good for humans. Elves, I don't really know, since they are sort of underspecified in terms of how their furniture and trees work, etc. The time scale they operate on might not be as compatible in the end, but maybe it'd be fine." And a question comes in from Drakli, and they've got a multi-parter, but it's a quick one again, so let's read it. "I'm curious if there's any particular ideas or themes regarding which animals are war and hunting trainable. For example, wolves and giant wolves can't be trained for war or even hunting, while bobcats of all sizes can do both. Is it possible that training lists might be expanded?" And Tarn's response is, "It has never made any sense, and it's possible it could expand." The second part of Drakli's three-parter is here. Are there any plans on expanding access to oceanic content? Currently, there's a whole lot of creatures out there that are really difficult to interact with, like whales, sharks, and sea monsters, and aquatic folk like squid folk and merfolk because they're not amphibious and dwarves don't sail. And Tarn's response is, "It's not a priority because dwarves can't do much with the sea, and adventurers can't get out there either." And the final question from Drakli is, "Are there any current thoughts about adding additional creatures in the future? Animals or monsters?" And Tarn's response is, "Yeah, it has been a while since experiments or whatever the last group was, and longer since a fixed, real, or fantasy creature. We like new critters of all kinds." A question comes in from the Disciple of Armok, and they ask, "I think you have said something like this a few times now, along the lines that you are unhappy with the state of animals. I know this is not planned anywhere in the near future, but I wanted to ask if you could clarify what you mean by this. How do you envision to differentiate animals more?" And Tarn quotes DPH Kraken and Drakli, so I will read their responses first. "Most animals don't have much in the way of distinct traits or behaviors. There are a few sets of behaviors and lots of little details, but the main point of comparison is how much biomass they have. For example, lions and tigers hunt very differently, but the game only represents that by their active hours and their group size. When an adventurer hunts a historical member of either species, these distinctions are minimal, and you're up against a bunch of claws and fangs. Civilized creatures have personality and attribute variations, like dwarves typically being slower, stronger, and greedier, and uniquely have moods and trances. Animal differentiation could include more deliberate use of existing tags, or implement new interactions with the creature. Alternate material properties are a popular modded change, usually giving tougher skin to nastier beasts." Drakli also responded, and they said, "Another few changes I have seen modders put to good use are syndromes causing abilities, like bad-smelling musks, or a tactical behavior, like ambush, hunting creatures and having stealth until noticed like kobolds or gremlins do, or having uses for body parts that aren't standard, like a grasping tail." And Tarn's response is, "The replies cover it basically. The exact TXT files don't distinguish them nearly enough by behavior, or even physically." The next question comes in from the Flame 52, and they say, "I've always thought hunters were rather cruel. continuing to fire bolts randomly into an unconscious, bleeding, vomiting wild animal. Now that range attacks can be aimed, have you considered making ranged combatants aim for the head of a downed target, like melee combatants do? And Tarn's response is, I guess it's odd they don't already, since they seem to prioritize the head when the targets are awake. The next question comes in from Vanzetti, and they say, suicide and deformity are two prominent evil spheres, but neither suicide nor deformity are featured in game mechanics. Will this gap be addressed? And Tarn quotes a response from A Curious Cat and DPH Kraken. A Curious Cat writes, dwarves stuck with melancholy actively attempt to commit suicide. And DPH Kraken adds on, likewise, necromantic experiments result in beasts and horrors with explicit association with deformity. And Tarn's response to the question as well is the replies address this one. As you acknowledged, I don't know if we need more than what we have here. Deformity has some loaded stuff baked into it, as well in terms of regular people physically deviating from the norm. That should be addressed differently than non-demon tinged chaos magic stuff. A question comes in from Aztecs, and they say, I realize this is the first iteration of wizards, but will this iteration have some sort of simple wizard association? Otherwise, it feels a bit odd that wizards will spawn at the start of time and will have no socialization or collaboration with each other, only raising apprentices in isolation. Simple wizards associations can be situated at external sites, where the player can send a messenger to notify that wizard positions are available at fortresses. Associations can even break basic interactions. For example, a gathering every few years, maybe where apprentices are initiated as full wizards, or if the player mistreats wizards, blacklisting per job or advertisements for a period, or association dues in goods or temporary workers, but the player must pay for having wizards, which are then used to enhance the gathering site, or investigations sent to a fortress if wizards go rogue. More advanced iterations might have wizard councils as a political power, council representatives that visit the mountain homes, association markets for rare magical goods during gatherings, and evolve into additional wizard institutions, like universities or academies, which could be hosted at fortresses. Eventually, maybe have wizard-focused states forming, magocracies. And Tarn's response is, it's on the table, yeah. Whatever comes in from Myth and Magic Gen will set the stage, and however they incorporate into your fortresses will have to be respected in World Gen as well, so that is necessary actors and mechanics exist. I think it's quite likely we'll end up with at least some basic wizard organization concepts that are understood in some partial sense by other actors in the game for the first pass. And the final question of this month's Future of the Fortress comes in from Sedark, and they say, could the messenger role be used to send them and maybe a squad to make contact with other sites? As for now, from what I've read, the only way to make contact with new civs is sending the military and demanding a one-time tribute. A messenger could even have an evaluation role as a diplomat, where you can send them to broker peace with a civ you're currently at war with, and be proactive and not reactive with what goods you would like in the next caravan. Extra thing I remembered, would it be possible to add somewhere in the UI a way to remember the trade deals we've made with whom? For now, I only have DF Hack that can help with it, and only during trade. And Tarn quotes Zisudra, so I will read their response first. Specifically, Zisudra highlights that the messenger role could be used to send them and maybe a squad to protect to make contact with other sites. Zisudra points out that this is planned for the next release. Specifically, cleaning up siege negotiations, sending messengers to other sites, and the ability to see existing petitions. Zisudra then links the recent Tarn time from Kitfox Games, as well as my most recent interview with Tarn about developing battle magic. Links in the description. And that brings us to the end of the questions of this month's Future of the Fortress. And they've left me thinking about something, and I might need to address this in a video myself. What exactly is magic, and what does it mean for Dwarf Fortress? As far as I'm concerned, magic is here. We're in it. We're knee-deep in it, in fact. We've got several different kinds of magic, some more built-in and hardwired into the game, such as necromancy, and the curses that can already happen in your fortress, alongside of the magical items that are specific to adventure mode, as well as healing potions. Besides the more hardwired things that are already in the game, Putnam has been actively working on changing the raw files from their current format into Lua, which will allow for more varied scripting for different entities and creatures, and eventually the entirety of the game, theoretically. That encompasses the map rewrite, as well as the Raw rewrite, which was supposed to be part of the long wait. And now at this very moment, Tarn is working on parts of that myth generator that we saw what feels like a decade ago. Oh god, it was a decade ago. Meaning there isn't going to be a long wait per se, and there also isn't going to be a Myths and Magic update. We are just simply going to be getting little bits of magic over the next few years, as features come together and are ready for public consumption. I think this needs to be formed into a bigger video, a bigger topic, as in like, what does magic mean for Dwarf Fortress, and when are we going to see it? Is that something you'd like to see? Let me know down in the comments section. If you like these videos and you want to support them directly, the best way to do that is through my blog. I post semi-weekly blog posts about my work and the things that I do for this YouTube channel, as well as my streams. If you're interested in that, you could sign up for my email list, which is free. Alternatively, you could chuck a couple bucks at me directly through that. It's sort of like Patreon, but unlike Patreon, who takes a pretty hefty cut, I get 100% of the money. If you'd like to support my work here, that's probably the best way to do it. Thank you very much for watching this video, and I hope to see you in the next one.